All right. So we continue from that place where Shylock admits that he has brought a scale with him to cut the pound of flesh from Antonio. But at the same time, when Portia asks him to hire a surgeon or a doctor in order to save Antonio's life, he refuses to do so, stating that it is not mentioned in the bond. All right. Okay. We continue after that. So Portia tells Antonio, "Come, merchant, have you anything to say?" And the merchant is Antonio, of course. And then Antonio says, "But little." Little means nothing. Now, though he says that he has nothing to say, yet he goes on saying, and the remaining part that we shall do in this video is quite a sentimental part. Yes. And this is what Antonio says. Antonio says, "Give me your hand, Bassanio. Fare you well. Bye bye. Grieve not that I am fallen to this for you, for herein fortune, capital F, shows herself more kind." Why I said capital F is to show you the personification. Then is her custom. So bye bye, Bassanio. And I must say that fortune, which is given the form of a lady, has been very kind to me than she usually is. And then Antonio goes on to explain how or why fortune has been very kind to him. And he says, "It is still her use to let the wretched man outlive his wealth, to view with hollow eye and wrinkled brow an age of poverty." Because generally what happens, a man loses all his wealth and then he goes on living in his misery and his poverty. Okay. From which lingering penance, from which long torture, yes, of misery, doth she cut me off. At least fortune is not giving me that torture that I don't have to live and watch and live the days of poverty. I don't have to be in any misery. Fine. Uh, Commend me to your honorable wife. Tell her the process of Antonio's end. Say how I loved you. Speak me fair in death. And when the tale is told, bid her be judge whether Bassanio had once a love. So what do? You go home and you tell your wife how I died. And you see how sentimental it can be. We all know that Antonio has got into this trouble because of Bassanio. So Bassanio, now you go home and you tell your wife how I died and say something good about me and explain it to your wife that once you had a genuine friend. Okay. Now, repent not that you shall lose your friend, and he repents not that he pays your debt. For if the Jew do cut but deep enough, I'll pay it instantly with all my heart. So don't feel sad that your friend is dead for you, and your friend doesn't repent, doesn't regret that he is dying this way, because I know if Shylock makes a deep cut, I will die instantly. Now, after that, what Bassanio says is also quite sentimental. He says, "Antonio, I am married to a wife which is as dear to me as life itself. But life itself, my wife, and all the world are not with me esteemed above thy life." Oh my God, this is what Bassanio says. Bassanio says, "Antonio, I have a wife, but my wife and the entire world together is still not as valuable to me as you are." And then he goes on to say, "I would lose all. I, yes, sacrifice them all here to this devil. This devil is Shylock, to deliver you. I would readily sacrifice the life of my wife in order to please this devil Shylock and in order to rescue you." And the funny part is that he says this while Portia is nearby. And then this is what Portia says. Portia says, "Your wife would give you little thanks for that." Little means no. Yes, your wife will not thank you for that if she were by means near, to hear you make the offer. I'm sure your wife will not be very happy. Now, Graciano, remember, whatever Bassanio says, Graciano has to do the same. When Bassanio goes to Belmont, Graciano also has to go. When Bassanio marries Portia, Graciano also finds there Nerissa. And once again, if Bassanio's luck, Bassanio's fate depended upon the choosing of caskets, Nerissa had stipulated a condition that only if Bassanio chooses the right casket and marries her mistress will she marry Gratiano. So remember, whatever happens in Bassanio's life finds a somewhat parody in the life of Gratiano. And this is what Gratiano says. Gratiano says, I have a wife whom I protest I love. Protest is declare. I would she were in heaven, so she could entreat some power to change this currish Jew. So I wish my wife was already in heaven and she would request God to change the nature of this dog-like Jew, that is Shylock. Okay, now Nerissa is quite angry. Nerissa says, "'Tis well you offer it behind her back. The wish would make else an unquiet house. If you would say this near your wife, then you and your wife would have had a great fight." Now, at that, Shylock is shocked. Shylock says, "These be the Christian husbands. I have a daughter. Would any of the stock of Barabbas had been her husband rather than a Christian? So I wish, these are Christian husbands. Remember, children, a man's duty is to protect his wife, not his friend. And these are Christian husbands. They are willing to sacrifice the lives of their wives in order to protect Antonio. And my daughter, too, is married to a Christian. I wish she were married to any person who belongs to the tribe of Barabbas. And to understand Barabbas, we once again go back to the Bible and we have a criminal who was released on the day of the crucifixion of Jesus, a thief, and that thief is Barabbas. So what does Shylock say? Shylock says, I wish my daughter was married to any man who belonged to the tribe of Barabbas than to be married to a Christian. Okay, I continue. Then Shylock speaks aside. Shylock says, "We trifle time. I pray thee, pursue sentence. We are just wasting time. I request the court to pronounce judgment." And the sentence here is that Shylock be allowed to cut a pound of flesh from Antonio's body. Okay, now Portia says, "A pound of flesh of that same merchant's a pound of that same merchant's flesh is thine. The court awards it, and the law doth give it." That you understand. You are allowed to cut a pound of flesh. Happily, Shylock says, "Most rightful judge." And then Portia says, "You must cut this flesh from off his breast. The law allows it, and the court awards it." You are allowed to take a pound of flesh from near his breast. Shylock says, "Most learned judge, a sentence, come prepared. Get ready." And at that, Portia says, "Tarry a little, there is something else. This bond doth give thee here no jot of blood. The words expressly are, a pound of flesh. Yes, take then thy bond, take thou thy bond, pound of flesh, but in cutting it, if thou dost shed one drop of Christian blood, thy lands and goods are, by the laws of Venice, confiscate unto the state of Venice." So here, Portia really, turns the table and says, come and take a pound of flesh. But while you take a pound of flesh, make sure you don't drop a single drop of blood. If you do so, your property will be confiscated. With that, I pause here.